Hello everyone and welcome to Medicated Housewife DIY, where crafting and mental health come together. My name is Sarah. In today's DIY video, $1 full tumbling tower block pumpkin DIYs, we are making two different kinds of fall decor pumpkins using Dollar Tree tumbling tower blocks or Jenga blocks and some other supplies. These are some new ideas for fall, 4 different versions, quick and easy DIYs for you to love. So stick around and let's go make some stuff and jump right into this. To begin with, for the first set of pumpkins, we start by taking 2 pieces of this clear packing tape and we're going to place them sticky side up. Then I'm taking 8 jumbo size craft sticks, and you can get these at Home Depot. They call them paint stir sticks, or Walmart or Hobby Lobby has them too. And we're going to place them down onto the tape to hold the 8 craft sticks in place. Then I Googled some pumpkin clip art. I printed a pumpkin image and cut it out, and I am using a pencil to trace the pumpkin onto the craft sticks. You can also draw a pumpkin shape freehand if that's your jam. I don't trust myself to do that, so you feel free to do it that way if you'd rather. And because, as my grandma would say, I am sharp as a marble, I thought, hey, I should number these sticks to keep them in order when I cut them, not even thinking about the fact that I'd be cutting off the part I had numbered. I realized this later. I end up lightly numbering them again, but inside the cut lines. Sorry, Grandma. Then I repeat the same thing again for the back piece of the pumpkin, laying down some tape, assembling 8 craft sticks, but this time I reverse the pumpkin image before I trace it, since this piece is the mirror imaged back of the pumpkin, if that makes sense, and I hope it does. Then, with our sticks still taped together to keep them in a pumpkin shape, we want to very carefully use a scissors to cut out the pumpkin, both the front piece and that back piece. It can be tricky because these sticks do tend to split pretty easily when you're cutting, but try and avoid that by going slow and cutting each craft stick individually. And I also used a box cutter to help cut through some of those smaller angles. Just take your time, go slowly. We're cutting out both the front and the back of the pumpkin. With the first pumpkin cutout, we need to paint the front and the back. I ended up using my Folk Art Home Decor Antique Wax. I'll link that for you in the description box below, and I mixed that with some plain water just to thin it out, and I painted the entire craft stick, front, back, and the sides. So in order to do this, we need to remove the tape that's holding its pumpkin shape together. So after I paint the front of both the front pumpkin side and the back pumpkin side, I carefully pull each stick off the tape to paint the back side of it, and then I place each stick down in the right order so that we can keep its pumpkin shape, if that makes any sense, while it's drying. While the craft sticks are drying, I grabbed 24 tumbling tower blocks and a couple of small craft sticks from Dollar Tree, and I paint those with the same watered down antique wax color as I did for the jumbo craft sticks, and then I put those aside to dry as well. Then I made a second jumbo craft stick pumpkin, both a front piece and a reversed back piece, cut it out just like the first one. And I'm painting this pumpkin in different colors. I'm using a Folk Art chalk paint in the color Nautical, which is a lovely shade of blue. I also mix it with water to thin it out. And the second color is also a Folk Art chalk paint in the color Cascade, which is a chalky turquoise. And I'm also using Waverly White chalk paint. All the paints are mixed with water because I want them to look more like stain than paint. I want to see that wood grain coming through, and I will link all of the paints that I'm using for you below. I'm using the Nautical blue first, and since there's 3 colors, we will have a pattern. So I paint the first stick Nautical, skip 2 sticks, then paint another Nautical, then skip 2 more and paint another Nautical. I'm painting all sides of the stick, and I am careful to keep the sticks in their right order so that I don't mess up that pumpkin shape. and end up confusing myself, which I've been known to do. Second color is the white chalk paint mixed with water. So I paint the sticks next to the Nautical blue sticks with the white chalk paint mixture. I'm using a baby wipe to rub off any of the excess color so that I can be sure to see the wood underneath the paint color. The last color is Cascade chalk paint. That's the turquoisey chalky color, and I paint the remaining sticks in the pattern with that. And once this side of the pumpkin is painted, I do go back and repeat this color pattern onto the reversed back part of this pumpkin as well. So I will have two pieces, a front and a back of the pumpkin, painted in this same 3-color pattern. Then, just like we did with the antique wax colored pumpkin, we're going to take 24 Jenga blocks and a couple of small craft sticks from Dollar Tree. We're going to paint them all with my Waverly white chalk paint and water mixture so that I can get the white color with the wood tones showing through, and then I let all of that dry. Moving back to the brown pumpkin, I'm using these small craft sticks and some super glue, wood glue from Dollar Tree, to glue the back of both sides of this pumpkin in order to hold that pumpkin shape together. First, I used the painted small craft sticks, but I do end up using additional unpainted craft sticks to hold my pumpkin shape together more securely. These are the sides of the front and of the back of the pumpkin that will be hidden inside of the pumpkin, so I'm not worried about seeing the unpainted small craft sticks. Then I'm using more small craft sticks to glue together my blue pumpkin, the same way that we did with the brown pumpkin. I also had to glue some small pieces of the stem back onto the craft stick with the stem cut out because they broke off, but I just used some wood glue to reattach it. Then I let both the brown and the blue pumpkins that were glued together dry. Moving back to the brown pumpkin, I used some super glue wood glue to glue those Jenga blocks that we had painted earlier, and I glue them standing up onto the edge of one side of my pumpkin. And I don't want to go all the way around that whole pumpkin because I want there to be an opening at the top. So I glue the blocks from the top of one side of the pumpkin all the way to the top of the other side, leaving that top part, the very top part where the stem is, open. At that point, I put some glue on the tops of all of those blocks that I just glued into place, and I place the other side of my pumpkin, the other pumpkin, with the small glued craft stick side, that ugly side that we're looking at, facing inwards, and I let that whole piece dry. Now, what we did to the brown pumpkin, we are doing to this blue one also. We're using the white Jenga blocks we painted earlier, and I'm going to glue them standing up on the edge of one side of my pumpkin, and I leave that whole top part of the pumpkin open. And at that point, I'm going to put some glue onto the tops of all of those blocks that I just glued into place, and I'm going to place the other side of this pumpkin on top of that, and we're going to let the whole thing dry. I wanted to distress the blue pumpkin a little, so I'm using more antique wax. This time it's not diluted, and I use a dry, rough bristled brush and sparingly dry brush the wax onto the blue pumpkin. I'm doing it all over, but I'm paying special attention to all of the edges to give the distressing a more authentic look. I use the antique wax on the brown pumpkin too, the same way as I did with the blue one, but I do go a little heavier. Actually, I go a lot heavier with the wax on this brown one because in general, I felt it needed to be a much darker brown than what it was from the diluted wax I did earlier. So I do go pretty heavy on this, and I do want to change up the color and make it a deeper brown. And after looking at the finished pumpkin, I was not happy with how the edges looked, nor was I happy with the stem at all. So When in doubt, just add more stuff. And just like Jell-O, there is always room for nautical rope. So I grabbed my nautical rope from Dollar Tree and a hot glue gun, and I glued the edges of the pumpkin from one side of the stem to the other side of the stem to give it a more polished look. And I think we achieved that. I tucked the ends of the nautical rope into the inside of the pumpkin where no one can see them. And then I grabbed some jute twine I had on hand, used my hot glue to simply wrap that jute around the stem and to make it look much more stem-like. And I think we achieved that as well, if I do say so myself. I love when a project just comes together. And not to be left out, of course, I had to do the same treatment to my blue pumpkin. This time using the white nautical rope, also from Dollar Tree. I hot glued the rope to the edge of the pumpkin and used a white macrame rope, a little macrame cord rather, that I had on hand, but I will link it for you below as well. And I did the same wrapping stem technique as what we did on the brown pumpkin, giving my blue pumpkin a much more finished look. And this is how my first two fall pumpkin DIYs turned out. Now, these are tumbling tower blocks as well as jumbo craft sticks and some nautical rope pumpkins, but that's a mouthful, so let's just call them lovely fall decor. I like the rusticness of the brown pumpkin, but I love the coastal beachy feel I get from the striped blue pumpkin. I really love it, and I think the last minute addition of the nautical rope and twine on both pumpkins really make the project complete, but I want to know what you think. Let me know in the comments which one of these two pumpkins do you like best, and if you would use them as I've done here as a planter, or would you just place them on a table or a shelf as standalone decor. The second set of tumbling tower block pumpkins begins with us taking about 12 blocks, and I'm going to be using my mini chop saw, which I will link for you below, and I use that saw to cut the 12 blocks in half down the middle. It's not the exact middle, it doesn't have to be exact, it's close enough, but basically just cut down the middle of the block. Then I'm going to take groups of 3 blocks, and using super glue, wood glue, I'm going to attach them together, piled on top of one another, as you can see me do here. And I'm making 2 pumpkins, and each one of my pumpkins will need 17 groups of those 3 glued blocks. So in total, it's 34 groups of 3. We also are going to take our halved blocks that we already cut, and we're going to glue them into groups of 3 the same way, also piled one on top of the other. I assemble the pumpkins before gluing, so each pumpkin has 7 rows and 2 groups of 3 that are on the bottom, 2.5 groups on the second row above that one, 3 groups on the third row above that, 3.5 groups on the fourth row above that, the back, and we're back to 3 groups on the 5th row above that 4th row, and then 2.5 groups on the 6th row and 2 groups on the 7th and final row. The bottom and the top are the same amount of groups. Once the 2 pumpkin shapes are assembled, I can begin gluing each of those rows together. So we're going to do that first, and after that we can start to glue the rows to one another. It's one on top of the other in the exact same assembly that we have right out in front of you right here. So if you get confused, just look at the video. It's not complicated. You just have to watch what we're doing. In the meantime, off camera, I took 4 blocks and cut them all at 45-degree angles. I glued 2 sets of the 2 angled blocks together, and these are going to be our pumpkin stems. Once the glue is dry, I mix some water with some Craft Smart orange acrylic paint, and I mix that with some Folk Art acrylic in the color Moon Yellow, and I'll link them for you below. I then painted the entire pumpkin with that orange, yellow, and water paint mixture. For the other Jenga block pumpkin, I used my Waverly White chalk paint and water mixture, and I painted the entire pumpkin with that so that you could see the wood grain come through, but you could definitely see the white color. I painted my 2 Jenga block stems with the Folk Art antique wax, not the diluted one, just straight up, because I wanted them to be a nice dark brown. Off camera, I glued the angled stems to the middle top of both of my pumpkins. And then using a dry, rough bristled brush and my Folk Art antique wax, I distressed the white pumpkin all over, but I emphasized all the many edges just to give it a more realistic distressed look. I wanted it to look really old and, you know, maybe a little dirty or something. Then I did the exact same distressing technique to the orange pumpkin, which, by the way, looks so much more yellow on camera than it is in real life. It's actually a really calm orange shade in real life. You'll have to take my word for it. To give both these pumpkins a finishing touch, I took a couple of pieces of nautical rope and I unraveled them so that they were kind of frizzled and crazy looking. And I had some stray pieces of faux ivy lying around, and I peeled the leaves off of the plastic so that they were just flat. I also cut the point off of those little leaves so that they would look a little less like ivy and a little bit more like a basic leaf. I had this twine with little green leaves on it from a previous project, but I will link that for you below. So I cut a piece of that and made a very basic bow with it, secured with some floral wire. And I wrapped the crazy jute pieces around the stem, added the twine bow, and then I hot glued a couple of leaves to the top of my pumpkin. I did this for both pumpkins, and then my project was complete. And this is how both of my tumbling tower block pumpkins turned out. Now, there is no debate. These are 100% Jenga block, including the stem. And I think they're really cute. They're a little rustic, maybe even a little farmhouse too. Just perfect to begin the fall season with. I'm so excited for fall, aren't you? And these are all for Dollar Tree fall pumpkin DIYs. These are simple but rustic, or beachy, or coastal, or classic fall pumpkin decor, and I really like them. My favorite is the blue striped pumpkin, but I really do love them all. I want to know what you think. Let me know in the comments if you have a favorite. I would love to know what's on your mind. I hope you enjoyed this Medicated Housewife DIY, and if you did, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing. It really helps out my channel. Once again, thanks for watching, and until next time, I'm the Medicated Housewife, and crafting is my medication.